Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name's Micah. This is one of those stories you hear about others going through, and you think, nah, that could never be me. But life has a way of surprising everyone. Sometimes in the worst possible way. After I caught my fiancée in a lie, I walked away from the relationship. I believed that I was it. But nearly a year later, she showed up. And the truth she shared with me hurt more than the lie I caught her in. It changed the way I saw our entire relationship. It made me question whether I was blind or just too trusting. Sit tight for the whole story. Because what I'm about to share goes a lot deeper than you might expect. If you had met me a few years ago, I'd have told you I found the woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Her name was Ruby, and from the very first time we spoke online, we clicked. We met on a dating app. I remember our first chat going on for hours. Over time, the bond between us got stronger. We went from texting all day to talking on the phone every night, and before long, we were spending weekends together. She fit into my life, and there was this comfort in being around her. After a couple of years, I was sure I wished to spend the rest of my life with her. I didn't have a single doubt in my mind. So I proposed. She said yes, and everything felt like it was falling into place the way it was supposed to. I was proud to call her my fiancée. Not long after the engagement, we decided she'd move into my apartment. The idea was simple. Why live apart when we're planning to get married? It made sense. Living together would make the whole wedding process easier and give us more time together. She packed up her things, moved in. It was one of those rare moments in life when it feels like everything is just working. That's how it started. Before everything else, we were just happy. I'll be honest, I didn't see the change in Ruby coming. I really thought we were on the same page. But then, something started to feel. It was more like little things piling up over time until I couldn't ignore them anymore. She started pulling away from me emotionally. The warmth she used to have just faded. When I tried to talk to her, conversation started feeling like a chore. She'd give me one word, answers like she was half listening, or worse, not listening at all. We went from being in sync to living like polite roommates. What made it worse was how secretive she became. She'd suddenly remember errands she had to run, but the time she'd spend outside never made sense. She'd say she went to grab toothpaste or something from the pharmacy, but it would take her 2, sometimes 3 hours, and she'd try to act normal. Then there were the phone calls. That part really messed with my head. I'd catch her talking on the phone in a low voice, pacing around, or standing. But the second I entered the room or made my presence known, she'd end the call almost instantly. She would give an awkward excuse like it wasn't important or just a wrong number. But that kept happening. It started eating at me. I'd be wondering who she was talking to, where she was really going, and why she couldn't just be honest with me. But still, I didn't want to explode or accuse her of anything without proof. I've always believed that the truth has a way of coming out if you're patient enough. So instead of blowing up, I watched and paid attention. As time passed, Ruby started falling sick a lot. It wasn't like a one-off flu or a stomach bug. This was happening every other day, mostly in the evenings. She'd complain about headaches, feeling nauseous, and being dizzy. Some days, she'd barely eat. Other days, she'd stay in bed. At first, I thought maybe it was stress, but it kept happening. So much that she had to take a leave of absence from her job. That's when it clicked that it was more serious than she let on. I asked her if she wanted me to take her to a hospital, and she brushed it off. Said it wasn't that bad. I remember that first time I brought it up. She said she had already gone the day before while I was at work. I didn't want to be that guy who accuses someone of lying when they say they're sick, you know? Another week passed, and she still hadn't bounced back. At that point, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I felt helpless, but I also felt like I was being played. One day, I came home earlier than usual. I just wrapped up work quickly and figured it'd be nice to surprise Ruby. I opened the door and walked into the living room, and that's when I heard her voice, almost like she was arguing. She didn't hear me come in at first, so I paused by the hallway, listening. She was on the phone with someone, and it was emotional. I couldn't catch everything, Then I stepped forward, and she saw me. The second her eyes met mine, she went silent, like someone had hit pause. She didn't even try to finish the sentence. That moment told me everything I needed to know. I asked her straight up, "Who were you talking to?" She blinked a few times and said, "It was my brother." But the problem was, it didn't make sense. She doesn't even talk to her brother that often, and even when she does, it's never with that kind of tension. That wasn't a sibling conversation. So I asked again, calmly but firmly, "Let me see your phone." She clammed up, clutching her phone like it was her lifeline while shaking her head, saying I was overreacting. After a minute, she realized I wasn't backing down. Maybe she saw something in my face, I don't know, but she slowly, hesitantly handed me the phone. I didn't scroll far. I went straight to her call log and checked the last number. It was her ex. The same guy she always described as manipulative, toxic, the reason she had trust issues in the first place. The one she once said traumatized her and was part of the reason she almost gave up on love before we met. Calmly, I handed the phone back with a simple, quiet instruction: "Pack your things and leave." She looked stunned, like she didn't think it would come to that. She started crying, telling me it wasn't what I thought, that it was complicated, that I didn't understand. But I didn't want to hear it, because the moment she kept that connection alive with someone she said she was done with, she broke something between us. I didn't want to stay there and spiral. So I went into the bedroom, changed out of my work clothes, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I just needed to breathe air that didn't feel thick with lies. I didn't come home that night and didn't even care where she went after I left. The next day, I came back, and the place was quiet. Her stuff was gone. I saw a few messages from her, trying to explain, trying to reach me, but I didn't open most of them. I replied to one, and I said, "Whatever we had is over." I blocked her after that. I made peace with the decision and forced myself to move forward. After Ruby left, I won't lie to you, I felt like a part of me had been ripped out. But I also knew that if I sat in that pain too long, it would eat me alive. So, the first thing I did was move out of that apartment. Every corner of that place reminded me of her. I found a new place, smaller but quiet. Then I changed jobs. Not because my old one was bad, but because I needed a total reset. I didn't want to keep running into old coworkers who would ask about Ruby. I didn't want to explain anything to anyone. I just wanted a fresh routine, new people, something to throw myself into without constantly being reminded of the life I was supposed to be building with her. The new job was tougher, but I welcomed it. It kept my head busy, and honestly, that's what saved me from spiraling. In the months that followed, I focused on myself. As time went on, I stopped checking her social media. I stopped wondering where she was, or who she might be with. I truly believed she had moved on, just like I was trying to. For a while, I even convinced myself that maybe what happened was for the best. One day, I was home alone, unwinding from work. Then I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't in a rush to open it. But when I did, there she was, Ruby. I froze. My first reaction was confusion. I hadn't seen or heard from her in over a year. I remember asking, almost out of instinct, "What are you doing here?" She didn't look surprised by my reaction. She just said she wanted to talk. Then she asked to come in. I stood there for a second. Then I stepped aside and opened the door wider. She walked in. We didn't say much as we walked into the living room. I sat down first. She followed. The air was heavy, awkward, and unfamiliar despite how well we used to know each other. Then she looked at me and said, "I came to confess. I don't like how things ended with us." I didn't respond. I just stared. Honestly, I had already prepared myself not to believe anything that came out of her mouth. To just let her speak so I could finally, officially close the chapter. But what she said next, I wasn't ready for. She looked me in the eyes and said, "I was pregnant when we broke up, but the child wasn't yours." I didn't say a word. I was trying to process if I had actually heard her correctly. But she didn't stop. She said she found out she was pregnant when she was already 3 months in. She said the father was her ex. She said it happened during a break. A break I didn't even realize was a break. That's when my memory kicked in. Before I proposed, we'd had a nasty fight, we didn't talk for days, and I secretly wondered if it was over. I thought we were done. But we reconnected, apologized, and a few weeks later, I asked her to marry me. I never thought to ask if she had been with someone else during that gap. It didn't occur to me. I loved her. I thought she loved me. But apparently, in that space where I was hurting and trying to figure out how to fix things, she ran back to the very man she swore was the worst thing to happen to her. I remember looking at her and asking, "So you slept with someone during that short separation, and didn't tell me when we got back together?" She went completely silent. Then she nodded. She explained that the day I walked in on her on that phone call, the one that made everything explode, she had been arguing with her ex. She told me he had been pressuring her to terminate the pregnancy. She didn't want to. But by the time of that phone call, she said it was already too late. She was too far along. Suddenly, all the strange behavior made sense. The distance, the lies, the sickness she kept brushing off, the secrecy, the fake errands, the dodged hospital visits, everything. It wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal wrapped in layers of deceit and silence. After she finished, she stood up and said something I'll never forget. "I didn't come here to fix things between us. I just needed to tell you. I couldn't carry it anymore." And with that, she walked out. I didn't try to stop her. I didn't even stand up. I didn't know how to feel. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was realizing how close I came to building a life on a foundation full of cracks I never saw. You know, sometimes people talk about closure like it's some neat ending tied up in a bow. But the truth can be jagged and messy. I still don't know what to make of this truth. Should I feel lucky? I mean, I could have ended up raising a child that wasn't mine, living a whole lie in my own home while convincing myself everything was fine. So I probably dodged something huge. Or I should be grateful I found out before the wedding, before diapers and sleepless nights and paternity tests that wreck you years later. But then, why does it still hurt like hell? Why does my chest still tighten when I think about how close I came to building a future on something so broken? I keep wondering how long she would have gone on with it. Would she have ever told me if I hadn't caught her on that phone call? If I hadn't asked for that phone? Or would I have just ended up another guy putting his name on a birth certificate, thinking he's a dad, when in reality, he's just the safety net? People say knowledge is power, but all this truth did was flip my whole world inside out. It didn't bring peace. It didn't bring closure. It brought more questions, more what-ifs, more nights where I sat staring at the ceiling, asking myself how I missed all the signs. I used to think love made you sharper, more in tune with someone. But sometimes it just makes you blind. And that's what hurts the most. So now I turn to you, listening. Tell me honestly, what do you think? Was I right to walk away the night I did? Or should I have stayed and tried to understand more, maybe handle it differently? Because even now, even after all of it, I still don't know how to feel.